The lost transmission. The space signal NASA deleted in 9 minutes topic. A signal from the edge of the galaxy appeared, then vanished in 9 minutes. NASA erased every trace before the world could hear it. Was it a cosmic glitch, an alien message, or something humans created in secret? For 9 minutes, we glimpsed the impossible, and the universe may still be waiting for our answer. Darkness fills the screen. A faint hiss of static hums in the background, slowly sharpening into fragmented radio noise. March 14th, 2027, Euro 2:17 UTC. Inside NASA's Goldstone Deep Space Relay, a technician leans toward a flickering monitor as a thin green line begins to pulse across it. Signal acquisition confirmed. Source origin unknown, a voice reports. The room tightens. The pattern on the screen isn't random. It's rhythmic, deliberate, almost like a heartbeat coming from somewhere beyond the solar system. Another voice breaks through the tension. Can you triangulate that? A beat passes. Working on it. It's not reflecting from any known satellite. The hum builds into a strange harmonic tone that seems to vibrate in the air itself. Then, without warning, everything stops. The displays freeze. Instruments stutter and die. A senior controller's voice cuts through the confusion. Cut the feed. Lock the servers. The clock on the wall advances. 8 minutes 9, before the file vanishes entirely. No backup, no copy. Just silence. The engineers sit in disbelief, listening to the empty hum of machines that once carried something extraordinary. Whatever it was, NASA erased it before the world could listen. The signal that shouldn't exist at first, the signal appeared ordinary. Another burst of cosmic background chatter echoing across the galaxy. But when analysts at the Goldstone Relay Station isolated its source, they froze. It was coming from well beyond the heliopause, interstellar coordinates, far outside the reach of any known probe or natural emission zone. A low rhythmic pulse repeating every 421 seconds with near-perfect consistency. It wasn't random, it wasn't chaotic, and it wasn't fading like a dying star. The waveform showed something deliberate, a modulation pattern that rose and fell like a heartbeat. Normally, space noise is messy, plasma waves, magnetar bursts, or pulsar signals fractured by dust and distance. This one was impossibly clean. The frequency curve displayed a symmetry so precise it resembled engineered code. The energy output fluctuated with purpose, not decay. One analyst whispered what everyone was thinking, but no one dared to say, "This looks like language." Within an hour, every terminal at Goldstone was rerouted to a secured network. The discovery, which should have lit up the scientific community, was suddenly buried under layers of protocol. A senior official from Washington joined the call. His tone was calm, measured, but cold. Treat this as a containment issue. No external data transfers. The words landed like a verdict. Inside the lab, awe turned into unease. Technicians who had once celebrated distant comets and radio echoes now stared at something that felt alive. It wasn't just a signal, it was a message shaped by intention. Every repetition was identical, yet slightly evolving, as if adapting to the interference of space itself. No natural system self-corrects like that, one physicist murmured. Outside, the night remained silent, stars burning indifferently. But deep inside the servers, the pulse continued, steady, patient, and aware. The realization grew heavy in the room. This wasn't background noise, it wasn't an echo, and it wasn't a glitch in the instruments. Whatever they had detected had chosen its rhythm carefully. It was too perfect, too structured, too knowing. This wasn't noise. It was a voice from the dark, the 9-minute window, a timeline breakdown. The timeline of the event would later be pieced together from fragments, corrupted cache files, forgotten audio logs, and a handful of terrified witnesses who remembered every second of it. It began at Israel the moment the signal was confirmed. The detection software at Goldstone lit up like a Christmas tree, each monitor alive with clean, rhythmic pulses repeating with surgical precision. At first, the technicians assumed it was an error, some reflection, a terrestrial echo, but the coordinates pointed far beyond the solar system, into a region of space with no cataloged sources. "It's stable," one analyst whispered, her voice barely above the hum of the machines. "That shouldn't be possible." By 02 bar, the chatter in the control room had become a low, nervous chorus. A few operators began to record the raw feed manually, fearing the automatic systems might overwrite the buffer. Others ran interference checks, confirming there was no atmospheric reflection, no human satellite, no Earth-based explanation. The numbers on the frequency plot lined up like coded speech. "We're not just hearing something," a senior engineer murmured. "We're being addressed." At 0430, NASA's Deep Space Network stepped in. A command packet from Mission Control redirected the signal to a classified subnet for origin isolation. The mood changed instantly. The hum of excitement turned to a mechanical silence. Lines of data scrolled too fast to read. Then, a small red icon appeared on one monitor. A protocol alert. Encryption flag detected. Someone had tagged the signal as a potential data payload, meaning it carried structure, information, not just energy. That single flag triggered the first stage of lockdown. Between 0430 and 06 GAR, everything moved fast. Internal communication channels were restricted. The public feed from Goldstone was redirected to a placeholder maintenance page, and remote access keys were revoked. Operators were told to secure all local copies. One of them, still recording on a portable drive, slipped the USB stick into his pocket before the order came through. Over the intercom, the supervisor's voice was steady but strained. "We're going to full blackout. No external transmissions. Now." By 06 bar, the control room was a tomb. Every screen displayed the same frozen waveform, the last captured pulse before the feed went dark. At 0712, the central archive server disconnected itself from the public node. By 0841, even internal backups were scrubbed. Then at 09 WAR, it was over, 9 minutes. That was all it took for a once-in-a-lifetime discovery to be locked, encrypted, and erased from public existence. The technicians sat in silence, headsets still on, staring at the blank monitors that moments before had pulsed with the rhythm of something alive. One whispered, "We heard it breathe." Another replied almost to himself, "And now it's gone." 9 minutes of history, vanished, sealed behind a firewall no one dared to breach. The erasure. When data disappears, it happened quietly, with no alarms and no dramatic countdown, just a sudden, eerie stillness. One moment the Goldstone servers were alive with data, a living cascade of numbers and waveforms, and the next, nothing. At 0226 UTC, the main archive flashed red. The status bar read, "Data stream terminated." Operators thought it was a routine disconnect, a power surge maybe, but when they tried to relaunch the sequence, the terminal rejected every command. The entire directory, primary, backup, and cloud mirrors, had been wiped clean. Even the redundancy systems, the ones designed to survive nuclear EMPs, showed no content detected. Panic rippled through the control room. Logs that had existed seconds earlier now displayed 0 entries. Mirrored drives synced across 3 continents all reported the same anomaly, instantaneous deletion. Someone whispered, "That's impossible. You can't delete everything at once." Yet, line by line, confirmation came in from JPL, Canberra, Madrid, each mirror node offline, each one locked out behind administrative clearance none of the engineers possessed. The staff expected answers, but what arrived instead was silence. The next morning, NASA's public data portal showed no mention of the event. Press requests were redirected to technical maintenance. No official report. No acknowledgement. It was as if the signal, and the people who had witnessed it, had never existed. For a space agency built on transparency, the sudden wall of secrecy felt unnatural, surgical. Some of the team tried to ask questions, only to find their access credentials quietly revoked within hours. The deeper they looked, the faster the trail vanished. 9 minutes, that's all it took. 9 minutes of recorded history. Enough to prove humanity wasn't alone, or enough to erase the moment we almost knew. The whistleblower, voices from inside, he never planned to come forward. In fact, he wasn't even supposed to exist, not in any official roster, not in any payroll archive. He was a contracted systems analyst, one of dozens who rotated through NASA's data management division, patching back-end code and monitoring transmission integrity. But on March 14, 2027, when the 9-minute anomaly pulsed through Goldstone, he was on the night shift, and his workstation had an unsanctioned habit. It auto-mirrored incoming data to a private buffer for diagnostics. That habit, born of paranoia, would make him the only person left with proof that the event had ever happened. In the weeks that followed the erasure, he disappeared from the network logs. When he resurfaced months later, it was under a pseudonym, Echo 4, in a private signal group frequented by ex-agency contractors and radio astronomers. He began uploading encrypted fragments, sound files, signal transcriptions, checksum sequences. Most were corrupted beyond repair, but a few seconds of raw transmission survived. The audio was unsettling. Not random noise, not static, but pattern. 3 ascending tones, a pause. Then 2 lower ones, perfectly timed, like an answering call. Analysts who decoded the waveforms found harmonic resonance embedded deep within the carrier signal, a mathematical structure impossible for a natural source. In one clip, the pulse amplitude rose and fell in ratios that matched the Fibonacci sequence. It wasn't random, Echo 4 wrote. It was constructed. When questioned in an anonymous interview, his voice trembled, part fear, part awe. "We were told to wipe it, every bite of it," he said. "They told us to forget it ever happened. But how do you forget a voice that sounds alive?" He described the moment the blackout order came down. Supervisors entered the room without a word, handed sealed envelopes to team leads, and left. No explanations, no questions. Within minutes, external access was severed. Some engineers joked it was a cover-up. Others just stared at the blank screens, hollow-eyed, but Echo 4 couldn't let it go. He kept listening to the fragments he'd saved, night after night, amplifying, filtering, decoding. What he found wasn't words, but rhythm. Intelligence wrapped in signal, like a heartbeat trying to break through the noise. And every time he replayed it, he swore the pulse grew clearer, almost as if it was listening back, decoding the fragments, hidden patterns. In the months that followed the blackout, whispers spread through the global research community. A strange signal, a deleted archive, a 9-minute mystery that no one at NASA would acknowledge. But then slowly pieces began to resurface. First came corrupted checksum lists, then half-decoded packet captures, all bearing the same digital fingerprint, a transmission that had never been meant for public eyes. Independent analysts, radio astronomers, data engineers, even cryptographers began reconstructing the fragments. Using recovered parity codes and timestamp mismatches, they aligned what little survived into a rough waveform. The result wasn't pretty. Bursts of static, fractured tones, long silences. But beneath the noise, a pattern began to breathe. It started with the intervals. The signal's timing structure followed a rhythm that matched prime number spacing, 2, 3, 5, 7, 11, pulsing in exact ratios that no known astrophysical source could produce. Natural emissions like pulsars or quasars follow decay curves and periodic drifts, but it was too perfect. When plotted on a spectrograph, the energy peaks formed geometric harmonics, repeating in threes. "It's the universal language," one researcher explained in a leaked interview. "Mathematics. If you wanted to talk to someone who didn't share your biology or language, you'd start with prime numbers." As reconstruction improved, so did the sound. In one recovered clip, 3 low tones rise in rapid succession, followed by a faint harmonic resonance that almost sounds like an echo. Another researcher, a physicist from Caltech, analyzed the tail end of that echo and froze. The returning frequency matched Earth's own deep space transmission band, specifically the range used for Voyager's interstellar beacon. "It's like," it answered, she whispered in the recording. "Something out there mirrored our frequency, down to the decimal." Visual simulations mapped the pulse into 3 dimensions. Waves spiraling in fractal symmetry, forming structures that looked eerily like Mandelbrot sets. The deeper they zoomed, the more layers appeared, as if the message contained data folded within itself. One analyst described it as code within code, an encrypted lattice hidden in harmonic ratios. Others speculated that the pattern might be a temporal key, a sequence designed to synchronize with something, perhaps even someone. The scientific community fractured. Some dismissed it as digital interference, the byproduct of data corruption. Others claimed the precision of the intervals defied coincidence. "This isn't random cosmic chatter," said a retired SETI technician in a late-night podcast. "This is structure. This is intention." But the most chilling discovery came last. When a group of independent researchers overlaid the reconstructed waveform with recordings of Earth's own interplanetary transmissions from a decade earlier, a strange alignment appeared, faint but undeniable. The signal didn't just resemble human code, it seemed to respond to it. A perfect mirrored tone, delayed by the exact distance light would travel between our planet and the coordinates of the source. For a few seconds, humanity had whispered into the dark, and something, somewhere, had whispered back, the theories, natural, artificial, or us? The debate over the lost transmission fractured the scientific world like a fault line, not because of what was proven, but because of what couldn't be disproven. When something vanishes that completely, the void it leaves behind fills with theories, each more unsettling than the last. What had the Deep Space Network heard that night? Was it a mistake? A message? Or something we were never meant to recognize? The first explanation, and the one NASA quietly leaned on, was a pulsar misread. They suggested the rhythmic pulses were simply a rare harmonic emission from a fast, spinning neutron star, distorted by cosmic dust. It was safe, grounded, familiar. But the problem was precision. Pulsars, however regular, drift in their rotation, and their energy signatures don't modulate in complex sequences. "You don't get Fibonacci ratios from dead stars," one astrophysicist scoffed. "Nature can repeat, but it doesn't count." Others proposed a subtler possibility, that what Goldstone had detected wasn't alien at all, but a reflection of our own voice. A ghost signal, bouncing back from deep space, warped and delayed by gravitational lensing or dark matter interference. In this view, the echo at Voyager's frequency wasn't communication but coincidence, the universe acting as a cosmic hall of mirrors. It was a comforting idea, that we had only heard ourselves. Yet even this theory crumbled under scrutiny. The delay time didn't match the expected travel distance. The reflected tone carried information not present in the original transmission. Somehow, the echo had evolved. Then came the theory that divided even the skeptics: artificial origin. A few independent physicists and cryptographers proposed that the signal bore signs of quantum resonance modulation, a method of encoding information across multiple frequencies simultaneously, something beyond known human or natural technology. If true, it suggested not just intelligence, but intent, that the transmission had been aimed at us. "The signal knew how to find our window," said Dr. Lena Vargas, a communications theorist. "It didn't shout into the void. It whispered into our ear." But the final theory was the most controversial, and the most dangerous to discuss publicly. Some insiders whispered that the transmission was never extraterrestrial at all, that it originated from a classified human experiment, possibly an advanced AI probe or a defense satellite test, hidden beneath layers of cosmic noise. If that was true, then NASA's panic wasn't fear of aliens. It was fear of exposure. A secret project had spoken, and the world wasn't supposed to hear it. Each possibility led to a different kind of dread. If it was natural, we had misjudged the universe's complexity. If it was alien, We were no longer alone. And if it was us, then humanity had created something it could no longer control. Sometimes the truth isn't terrifying because it's impossible. It's terrifying because it's traceable. The cover-up. Why NASA? Stayed silent officially, NASA said nothing. Not a correction, not a clarification, just silence. For an agency that usually celebrates every faint cosmic anomaly with a press release, the absence of response was louder than any denial. Researchers who once spoke freely about data anomalies suddenly avoided the topic. Emails went unanswered, and when Freedom of Information requests were filed, they returned the same phrase. No records found. Why the silence? Some argued it was national security. If the transmission contained an encoded signal, even something that looked artificial, it could easily be classified as a potential threat. Under U.S. protocol, anything that might represent unknown technology, especially if it could be replicated or weaponized, falls under defense jurisdiction. Others suggested the motive was simpler: public panic. After all, even the faintest hint of intelligent contact could send shockwaves through global markets, religions, and governments. There was precedent for secrecy. In 1977, the WOW signal, a mysterious radio burst from deep space, was logged, debated, and quietly shelved when no repeat transmission was found. Decades later, Oumuamua, the interstellar object that zipped through our solar system in 2017, was briefly considered artificial by senior astronomers, before official channels reframed the story as unexplained but natural. NASA's pattern was always the same: acknowledge, contain, redirect. But this time felt different. The deletion wasn't just containment, it was erasure. Every trace of the 9-minute recording vanished across multiple systems, including off-site mirrors that NASA doesn't directly control. That level of digital purging suggested something, or someone, with access far beyond the agency's normal hierarchy. A few insiders whispered of a directive not from NASA itself, but from a higher authority, a multi-agency oversight group responsible for information deemed globally destabilizing, and that's where the story turns. Because maybe NASA didn't delete the data at all. Maybe someone deleted it from NASA, echoes from the void. The signal returns. It began quietly. A soft ping buried in the noise of routine space telemetry. Months had passed since the 9-minute signal vanished, and for most, the mystery had already faded into rumor. But at a new deep space observatory in Chile's Atacama Desert, a junior technician noticed something strange on the spectrograph. A low, rhythmic pulse coming from the same patch of sky once tagged by Goldstone. The data was faint, fragmented, and yet hauntingly familiar. At first, the team assumed it was residual interference, maybe leftover atmospheric scatter from solar activity. But as they amplified the signal, something impossible emerged. Within the wave pattern was a faint modulation, a frequency identifier unique to Earth's own transmissions. Not a coincidence, not a random overlap. It was our beacon code, the same one used by deep space probes to announce origin. This signal comes from Earth. The realization hit the room like cold air. The universe had just spoken our language. A full spectral breakdown confirmed it. Embedded within the returning signal was a pulse-for-pulse mirror of humanity's own transmission ID, repeated back with subtle modifications, as if something or someone out had copied it, studied it, and then sent it home. "We're looking at a reflection that shouldn't exist," said Dr. Naoko Tan, the observatory's director. "It's as though the dark itself is imitating us." But imitation wasn't the right word. The timing offset between the Earth signature and the original waveform matched the precise light travel distance to the coordinates of the first anomaly. In other words, the signal had made a round trip. Something had received it, processed it, and returned it. A perfect echo shaped by intelligence. Across the scientific community, debate ignited again. Some called it evidence of communication. Others called it coincidence wrapped in fear. But when the reconstructed audio was finally released among a small group of private analysts, they all heard the same thing, beneath the layered tones. A faint rising pattern, the same 3 ascending frequencies that started it all, followed by a deeper harmonic, almost like a reply, as one technician whispered during the playback, unable to look away from the monitor. We didn't just hear a message, we were answered. The message we weren't ready for. The story of the lost transmission ends not with a revelation, but with an echo, a silence so deliberate it feels alive. In those 9 vanished minutes, humanity brushed against something vast, something that spoke in mathematics and breathless rhythm. And when it spoke, we hesitated. Our first instinct wasn't to answer, it was to erase. In the months that followed, the world went on turning. Satellites hummed, telescopes scanned, and the signal's coordinates drifted into archived sky maps. But for those who had heard it, the engineers, the analysts, the few who still played the recovered fragments in the dark, something fundamental had changed. They had seen the curtain lift just for a moment, and behind it was not chaos but intent. Maybe that's why the data disappeared. Maybe we weren't ready to confront what waited beyond the static, the possibility that intelligence out there might already know who we are. Or worse, that it had always known. As the final voiceover fades, the visuals widen, a deep space panorama, stars like silent witnesses, the faint hum of a forgotten signal still resonating somewhere beyond the void. The narrator's tone softens, reflective yet uneasy. 9 minutes were enough to hear the universe whisper our name. And we chose silence, a pause. The stars flicker one by one. Maybe it was protection. Maybe it was suppression. And as the screen darkens, a final faint pulse, 3 ascending tones, rises from the noise, just audible enough to make every listener wonder if the message ever truly stopped, or if, somewhere in the endless dark, it's still waiting for us to reply.